This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everyone, to this week's edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's show, we've got results from 2 pay-per-views from last weekend. We've got some big happenings in WWE and AEW. We've got a former WWE star leaving AEW along with 2 other people. We've got big names on NXT. And as of right now, while we record this podcast, we're recording this on June 1st, this megastar in WWE, she's out. She's out of WWE, and there's no timetable for her return. We're going to talk about all of that. You're going to want to stick around, hang out to find out who that person is, helping me break it all down, sort it all out, and figure out this wonderful, wild world of wrestling is the one, the only, the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Cuz, man, it's crazy. Last weekend was so special in regards to the world of professional wrestling. It was wild. And I have to admit, I'm leaning more towards the WWE style of 5 matches, get invested, cuz I hate to say it, hate to admit it publicly, but I fell asleep. I could not make it through the AEW pay-per-view. I fought hard to see Swerve Strickland do his thing, but if you're rolling pay-per-views that are going to end at 12:40 and then you have a media scrum, that is going to be tough for older people, big fans, kids, to stay awake and watch that. And so I had to go back and watch the chaos that was the main event at AEW. But man, it is tough. I tried real hard. Everything. I was invested. I liked both pay-per-views. I thought it was a special week. But you can't be expecting your fans to roll out and focus on 4.5 hours of wrestling content. You got to start cutting and streamlining it and making it best of the best, creme de la creme, like the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. We don't spend 3 hours breaking down everything because eventually speaking, we know that by the hour mark, your attention span is going to fade and we respect everyone's time. So half an hour to an hour is the perfect spot for podcasts. My God, Tony, slow down and cut down your pay-per-views. My God.
Yeah, man, it's tough when you have a pay-per-view that is 13, 14, 15 matches deep, and it runs damn near 5 hours. Honestly, the stuff on the pay-per-view, it's not like it's bad. They're actually great pay-per-views. The problem is you don't give things enough time to breathe. A prime instance is, and we'll talk about it later on in the show when we get to AEW, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, and Stokely Hathaway turned on Willow Nightingale, and this is after the Mercedes Moné match. Mercedes Moné, her character is going to bask in the glory and hang out in the ring and going to be there a prolonged time. She ushers herself out of the ring quickly so they can get to the next angle, which is Chris Statlander turning on Willow Nightingale. And then from there, you're moving on to the next match. You need to let that stuff breathe. It needs to resonate with the audience. It needs to be a poignant moment so you can go back to it when you have Dynamite or when you have Rampage or when you have Collision. You need those things to kind of sit and marinate for a few moments because you move so quick. Things are so fast-paced on AEW pay-per-views. You tend to miss stuff. You tend to miss important moments, and then it's like, oh, yeah, that happened. Oh, yeah, that took place. And it becomes tough. Whereas with WWE, you've got 5 matches, and it'll occasionally throw a 6th in as like a pre-show match, and you're getting time. Everything gets its moment. And look, you can look at the Cody Rhodes Logan Paul match. There was a spot where Logan Paul goes up to the top rope. Cody's laid out on a table. They've got this great drone shot of him. And like everybody's talking about it. It's because it had time. He didn't have to rush it. He got up there. He waited a few moments, basked in the glory of what was going on, and then he executed the move. And it became a talking point coming out of this pay-per-view. So you have these things that take place, and you just have to sometimes give them time. With all that said, let's jump into the King and Queen of the Ring. I agree with you. I thought it was a really good pay-per-view. A lot of surprises in this pay-per-view and some things that we didn't think about, some things that we didn't really take into consideration. And first off, we start off with a big surprise. Me and you both got this one wrong on our picks, but Liv Morgan defeats Becky Lynch to win the Women's World Championship. Dirty Dom plays a bit of a role here, and there's a bit of a distraction caused. This plays a bit of a part on what took place on Monday night in WWE, talking about letting things kind of sit and marinate. WWE kind of had a bit of a production botch that we're going to talk about. But Liv beats Becky Lynch to win the World Championship, the Women's World Championship. What did you think of this match? What did you think of this finish? Because I was shocked. I was surprised.
Well, when you think about it, too, you can't have a world champion not under contract. And it ends up
Correct.
being a situation in which you never want to have happen what happened probably in the worst moment in history when Medusa goes over to WCW, takes the belt, and drops it in the trash of WCW and Eric Bischoff. Now, I don't think Tony Khan would go down that dirty route, but you can't have it happen. So we probably should have predicted that, but I just think that, if you're Becky Lynch, I think that should have parlayed you into a new contract. But when you look at it, well, potentially speaking, her situation probably ended up being the right thing too. And it also ends up tying nicely that you give Liv a nice little run, and the person that's going to whoop her ass to take it is going to be eventually Rhea Ripley. So I think it stinks because in the new era of Paul Levesque and Triple H, you don't really kind of see belts kind of being treated like that. But unfortunately, sometimes you do need a transitional champion to set up something. And I think Liv Morgan getting a win on pay-per-view in front of the Saudi fans, you always get the opportunity to say, okay, now we get a chance to see, these matches are not automatically guaranteed.
Yeah, and you know what? I think, too, this was the right call because this creates a really interesting story going forward. They added to it on Monday Night Raw, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But I think this was the right call. And like you said, Becky Lynch, not currently under contract, or she hadn't at this time signed a contract with WWE. So what do? You can't have a moment like you had with Medusa on WCW. So it makes total sense. Again, you and I probably should have had a little bit more forethought and thought ahead a little bit and been like, oh, hey, here's the bigger picture. Here's the landscape. Sometimes I know with myself, I see the trees in the front. I don't see the forest. And this was one of those things where I needed to pull back a little bit and need to see the forest to see what was really going on from the business standpoint of it all. Next, we had Sami Zayn defeating Bronson Reed and Chad Gable to retain his Intercontinental title. This was a great match. This was fantastic. You have a big man, you've got a small man, and then you've got the champion. And these guys all played their part. They all played their role. You got a little bit more build out for this Chad Gable and basically the disintegration of his stable with Otis hitting Chad Gable, costing him possibly winning the Intercontinental title. I thought this was a fun match. I thought this was a really good match. What did you think of Sami Zayn beating Bronson Reed and Chad Gable to retain his Intercontinental title?
Yeah, and that's what's all you can ask for is that Chad Gable, with each opportunity that he gets, he's emerging as somebody you can invest in and give television time to, mic time to, character development. And Bronson Reed, the future's bright. I think the time is now. Pull the trigger on giving him a push. And he's just a monster. He's getting better in terms of backstage talking and making people just pay attention to him. So if you can get his character to that next level, Bronson Reed's a star, dude. And it's going to be great to see when he starts getting titles and winning some of these feuds. And so all you can ask for is when a champion beats people, that it's relevant. And now on the list of Sami Zayn's title run in terms of the people he's defeated, they're credible. And this is great in this era in that the matches resonate and the people that are getting beat also can kind of move forward in their career. So I just thought that all the way around, the reception that Sami Zayn always gets overseas is great, and Sami Zayn can deliver. And it's kind of one of those perfect blends where the title matches the character that's holding it, and it's a beautiful fit right now with the IC belt and Sami Zayn.
For sure. Next, we had Nia Jax winning the Queen of the Ring when she beat Lia Valkyria. This almost felt like it was a bit of a squash match. Nia Jax just annihilated Lia Valkyria. What are your expectations for Nia Jax as the Queen of the Ring? This was somebody you picked. I didn't think Nia Jax was winning this. You had this one dead to rights, and Nia Jax is now your Queen of the Ring. Are they able to do a full-blown story and give her the mic time, give her the ring time, and give her the story that it almost feels like she deserves? It really feels like at a certain point, it's been a lot of this stop and start with Nia Jax. Things don't really get going. The fans turn on her quickly. And look, you've seen it on SmackDown when she was introduced in the ring as the Queen of the Ring. the fans were yelling, you suck, and I was like, man, that's kind of unfortunate. Like, she doesn't really suck. Like, we talked about her being a bit of a hazard in the ring and how she hurt people. I think she's gotten better. I think at a certain point, you got to give her a shot. You got to give her a chance, and you got to give her a legitimate story and see what she can do. Does WWE give her a little bit of the ball and let her run with it and give her that story?
Look, it's time, and this has been the best 9-month run of her career, and I think that Triple H sees something different in characters that he wants to invest in. And so my expectation for Nia Jax is to dominate, continue her run, and to be the physical presence and kind of to be the Bronson Reed of the women's division. And, outside of the tie to the physical kind of stature of the two, she's got to be dominant. She's got to be somebody that is a legit force, kind of like back in the day, and all these references to kind of like Earthquake. Someone that when they come in, you're scared and you're like, oh my goodness. And a victory is something that's well deserved. And I think that you got to have these scary figures in the ring, and she's imposing. And like you said, most importantly, she's got to be safe in the ring. And I'm certain that nowadays people are definitely certainly paying attention to that. But for Nia Jax, this is a good run for her, and I'm glad they brought her back.
All right, next we had Gunther beating Randy Orton. Some questions here because Randy Orton's shoulder was up, but he was pinned for the 3 counts. Gunther is now your king of the ring. Gunther was introduced on Monday Night Raw. Basically said he doesn't need this crown, doesn't need these people. Was this smart? Do you protect Randy Orton in this loss by having his shoulder up? Is Randy Orton then able to come back and say, hey, I want to challenge Cody. I deserve to challenge Cody. I didn't actually lose. And are you excited for the possibility of Gunther versus Damian Priest or Drew McIntyre? Does that kind of get you going?
Well, it stinks because it was predictable, but it's good that WWE addressed it and kind of made it like sports where Triple H comes out afterwards online and says, look, refs' decisions are final. I hope that there's an opportunity for Randy to get another shot at it, but he's going to be out. So it's just tough because the match in and of itself, it's just tough sometimes with body momentum. These are 2 big dudes. But boy,
yes,
did it harken back to the old days with big physical dudes wrestling. And it's fun to see. It's a change of pace. And the crowd obviously always loves Randy Orton. But Gunther deserves a push. And it's interesting because the next night on Raw, he does the promo. It's okay. It's okay. But it's not like it kind of felt like real standard. It didn't hit home. It didn't crush in terms of
you know what I thought was weird. So he's out there cutting that promo, and then you have Damian Priest come out, and they have this back and forth. The back and forth was fine. It was good. But Drew McIntyre then comes out, and Gunther just exits the ring. Like there's no like 3-way standoff. He just kind of like, okay, well, Drew McIntyre's here. I guess I'll go to the back. I thought that was weird.
Yeah, and it's tough too because I don't expect, it kind of sucks because when I see Clash at the Castle, you're really going to do that to those people twice? Is Drew going to win it? I mean, god dang. So, Drew, we're going to have you be the main event of Clash at the Castle, and you're going to lose. And he's going to be like, really? I mean, it's going to be tough because I think the money match is with Drew McIntyre. It stinks because we all think that, to me, it sucks because now the brand split has forced now the feuds to be developed. And to me, I just think that Gunther should be fighting Cody Rhodes. He's the second biggest star in the company in terms of believability. Heel can do it all. But the story's not there yet. It's not evolved. So I can understand where Gunther needs a Raw feud and Cody needs a SmackDown feud, and they've now established that. And it's fine, but it's just not something I'm ready to fast forward to. SummerSlam, I thought would have been great to see Cody versus Gunther, but you can't tie that together. There's no real story. Where now WWE is making stories and they're creating real intriguing stuff. So basically, long story short, WWE's got to do a little bit better job with Gunther establishing a rivalry with Damian Priest because round 1 was pretty weak.
Yeah, it wasn't great. A lot to build off of there. We ended the night with Cody Rhodes defeating Logan Paul to retain the Universal Championship. Look, as this match finished and Cody hit 3 crossroads, I was pumped up for all 3 of them. I was excited. I thought this was a really good match. Again, Logan Paul continues to deliver and continues to give you really entertaining, fun matches. Doesn't matter who he's in the ring with, he is giving you a fantastic match. There was a point in this match where Cody Rhodes had Logan Paul up. He had him was trying to hold him upright. And Logan Paul was slipping and Cody didn't have a good grasp on him. And this is two guys, two pros. You go back, you watch this. Cody ends up, you don't really see them talking, but they have a quick discussion. Cody Rhodes ends up dropping Logan Paul onto the top rope, uses the top rope to spring him back up and readjust him, lock his shoulder up and underneath Logan Paul's shoulder to get him more upright and hold him before he does the brainbuster drop. It was a really cool moment. If you know what you're watching for and you know what you're looking at, that is two pros. That is two guys doing things. And remember, Logan Paul is still green in this industry. Logan Paul has maybe 15 matches to his name. He is a guy who gets it, and he continues to impress. Even though he lost in this match, I am still blown away. And look, I'm talking more about Logan Paul than I am talking about the Universal Champion in Cody Rhodes. Logan Paul is fantastic and absolutely incredible. What did you think about the main event?
Oof. Look, it was great because we expect Logan Paul to deliver, and it was great. The top rope splash was great. Him trying to do the crossroads was great. Obviously, clearly, the ending was kind of weak with the influencer kind of being part of it. I didn't think that needed to kind of be there. I get it. You want the pops, and people, maybe have the ability to make requests of what they want to see. That didn't hit home to me, but all in all, Logan Paul always delivers, and Cody Rhodes is now really fighting against guys that he can definitely elevate, and it's a great experience. Really, in the end, does Logan Paul deserve to be fighting Cody Rhodes? No, but when you have a kind of a novelty show, everything overseas kind of suspends disbelief a little bit, and so you can have dream match opportunities. So basically, the Saudi shows are kind of like the AEW of things, where sometimes matches just are put together that don't have the best story, but the wrestling will deliver, and Cody Rhodes can have a wrestling match with anybody. So it was great. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought the spots were well timed, and it was a good psychological, physical battle. And like I said, Logan Paul really is the beneficiary more. And sometimes you have matches where the champion or somebody, like I said, Cody Rhodes doesn't need to be made. He's a made guy. And so certain things don't need stories. But in the end, Cody Rhodes is going to dive into stuff and give great ideas. And so that's what you got on SmackDown, because you got the evolution of a story that now takes the next step, which I thought was beautiful, because I was actually sold that maybe AJ Styles was going to retire. So I thought what they did to elevate that and kick that back up again, now you can have part two, and you have a reason. And I thought it was great. Mark Henry, everyone was saying, oh my God, Mark Henry is going to pop. And they relived a moment with Mark Henry back in the day pretending to retire. AJ Styles was pretty good. I didn't think he was going to do it, but then wait a minute, you're like, because he's the way they set it up over a couple of weeks, that's the way in which you do a well-written story. And you knew Cody and AJ had influence on it, and they sat down and said, what can we do? And Triple H probably pops in and goes, guys, let's get out of here. We don't need to have an hour-and-a-half meeting on this. Let's go out and hit a cigar. Just recreate Mark Henry's retirement. Perfect. Feud. And they all sit there, and probably you can see the light bulb moment go, oh, yeah. That's great. So the booking, I'm sure it probably didn't go down exactly like that, but that would be funny, in that you had an elevated feud for Cody, and it's believable, and I want to see more of it. And I think it was great last week where AJ's like, I need time, I'm not sure. So it was set up nice last week, and it continues into this week, and it was great. Man, that AJ Styles clash off the side there was great. Off the entrance ramp was great. And I want to see it. I want to see it again. It'll be great to see.
Yeah, look, on SmackDown, you had a great story that ran through the entire night regarding AJ Styles and what he was going to do and the decision he was going to make. And if you turned it on and you watched the first 5-10 minutes of SmackDown, you're like, this man is retiring. And he did a great job being solemn all the way through, all the way up to the very end where he clotheslines Cody Rhodes. And like you said, the Styles clash off the ring steps was absolutely crazy. I thought this was great. Look, I think this could be one of the more special feuds that we get. I thought their match that they had at Backlash was fantastic. I thought it was really enjoyable. I thought it was one of the best matches of that night. I think that you can get that, and you can get a 3 or 4 match series going. And look, Cody Rhodes, I think he is sometimes very underrated. He was in that ring, and whether they were legit tears, I believe he's a very authentic person. So they might have been legit tears. He might have been legitimately choked up. Or if it was just all make-believe. Either way, the ability that he has to go to those depths and be able to give you that type of emotion is fantastic. And then you contrast that with the savagery of what AJ Styles just did, I think is great. And then you put together, you got Carl Anderson and you got Luke Gallows. And then if you're going to give Meacham a bit of a nasty side, that could be great. And you could really have something special here. On top of that, you have to remember, there are old Bullet Club ties with both of these guys. AJ Styles was the de facto leader until he left to go to WWE. When he went to WWE, Cody Rhodes kind of became the second lieutenant in charge. There was this back and forth fight between him and Kenny Omega for who was leading the Bullet Club when Cody Rhodes came in. And that was right after AJ Styles left. So there's a lot to go there. There's a lot of stuff that you can build off of and tell a really interesting story. And I think this is fantastic. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking, what is the next big feud for Cody Rhodes? Who is Cody Rhodes going to wrestle? Who's the big bad guy? And at the time, AJ Styles is important. But at the time, he really didn't feel all that important. It just kind of felt like they were throwing him a bone at Backlash. The fact that they've been able to, within 2-3 weeks, really turn this whole thing around and spin it into this is absolutely wonderful. And it makes AJ Styles feel like he is so much bigger. He's in such a better place 3 weeks down the road than he was 3 weeks ago. And Cody Rhodes now has that bad guy to go against. Cody Rhodes now has that guy who's going to challenge him. If Cody Rhodes is Rocky, he now has his Apollo Creed, and this will be a fantastic story. So I think this is really well done, and I'm very, very interested in this. Yeah. Something else I'm interested in is what took place. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I can't wait to see it, and it's just going to produce more great matches, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I think the back and forth between these two guys, because they can both cut promos, they can both wrestle in the ring, they can do it all. I think this is going to be fantastic. I think it's going to be a really, really good storyline that we're going to have. Hopefully it doesn't end at this next pay-per-view. Hopefully we can kind of continue this one out and kind of get a really nice build and get a real good long story told here. Something else that's interesting, look, I was expecting this, but then I wasn't expecting this. You knew Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio were going to have some type of interaction. They've been teasing this for a while. And Dominic ends up getting involved in a steel cage match, costing Becky Lynch as she's on her way out the ring. Liv ends up retaining her belt, which, again, all this makes sense. You didn't anticipate them kissing on TV. And really, they didn't kiss on TV because whether it was a USA Network botch or whether it was a Raw production botch, just as they were going in for it, they cut. And you didn't get to see it, so you had to go to social media to find it. And it was weird, and it was cool. And I think this sets up for something really, really fun down the road. I want to know what you thought about the production mistake and whether that was an NBC issue, an NBC Universal USA Network issue, or whether that was a WWE mistiming things. And where do you think Liv Morgan and Dom Mysterio kind of fit going forward? And how does that play out of the Judgment Day? There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, it could be a foil to drive a wedge to Rhea Ripley. It's going to be used as a way to motivate. It just basically Dom's the pawn. I think that's the setup. Mm-hmm. It's going to be Dominic. Poor Dominic is the pawn in the middle of Liv versus Rhea. And it's just going to light a fuel under Rhea that, hey, you don't mess with Dom. And yeah, look, it was going to be hard to time because he got out there with like 2 minutes left in the show, and you still had Braun Strowman get to the cage, the slamming, everything go on. So you still, look, even though television time happens, here's the thing. WWE makes money off of their YouTube channel as well. There's compensation that they get. You get money. When you have that blue check mark, you can make some money if you get 50 million views on something that you run. So I could imagine that, look, do they really care in terms of timing? No, because they're going to air it. And if they air it on a different spot as a digital exclusive, they'll still make some money on it, maybe even more in terms of engagement in situations in which it's a social media company as well. So it doesn't matter in regards to as much as it did in the past, whereas, there wasn't an outlet to show things. Now, with digital media, YouTube, you can just throw a clip out there and the world's going to see it. Like, it wasn't like it's a big secret. So it's great to see that there is a purpose for Dom, being that he's hurt. So, look, Liv Morgan being champion now has some creativity and some legs to it in regards to setting up the legs as to why she wants to piss off Rhea, and it's great to see. And look at Dom gets Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, and look, everyone's saying online he's got the best life, and it's hard to argue. Dom's got it going on, and he's also got a significant other too. So the man's got it made in a lot of fronts.
Who do you think was responsible for that botch? Do you think that was a network issue? They had to get out of WWE program, or do you think it was WWE mistiming stuff?
No, I think it was mistimed. There was a lot they tried to throw in like 3 minutes, and it's just a lot going on. And the match happens, and it just stuff happens in live television. It's hard to time everything just perfectly. It could have been done intentional, but I do believe that it was an error not to show it live on television. But in the end, errors today don't have as much impact as they would in years past. Whereas, okay, it's like, we mistimed it, but we can still air it and still get a lot of engagement. It got like 40 million views or so pretty quickly. So it's a situation in which you get a lot of benefit from even a small mistake. And I just think that things can't run as crisp as always in terms of live television when you got so much going on.
Yeah, for sure. It becomes one of those things where you're trying to cram, like you said, a lot in at a very small amount of time, and you've got to kind of all hit your marks. And if somebody's just a little bit delayed in television, it can throw everything off. And it looks like there's maybe a little bit of a delay here. So real interesting. And you're right. It should have been done on television. It's cool that you have to go to the social medias for it, but it really should have been done on TV. All right. So real quick, just to recount the King of the Ring results. Doc, you ended up nailing 4 out of 5 picks, and you end up taking the point. This then moves us into what we had on Sunday, which was AEW's Double or Nothing. So we had our pre-show, which was Deonna Purrazzo defeating Thunder Rosa. You had the Acclaim defeating Cage of Agony. Next, you had Will Ospreay defeat Roderick Strong by pinfall to win the International Championship. I think we both agree this was the right call. This then leads to MJF's big return, and he comes out and calls out Adam Cole. I know you popped hard. I popped hard. MJF is back. How excited are you? On top of that, he looks like he is in great shape. The time away really helped him rest his body, and the guy looks amazing. But MJF is back.
Hell yeah, it was great. What a promo. He obviously clearly now has signed his long-term deal. Tattooing a company name on your leg is crazy, knowing that he's still so young. And even if it's a 5-year deal at 32, he could end up going to WWE. But if he does, it'll be great to see a character with an AEW tattoo. I wonder if he just ties it up or will probably wear boots or so. But, man, fire promo, legit. It was great. The entrance with the backstage, the way they set it up was flawless. It was crisp, beautiful. It's a shot in the arm for AEW. MJF is by far the best, and let's go and let's see what he's got going on in regards to what they're going to do with him next. Is it probably too early for Swerve to lose? Yeah. So you just have him just go through and start dominating people that burned him, and you start with Adam Cole, whoop his ass, and keep it moving. So I can't wait to see what they do with MJF. I think his appearances are going to be special. Hopefully he got the bag that he deserved, and it's going to be great. The MJF round 2 era of his run this go around is going to be special, and everybody can't wait to see it, man. It was great. Everybody popped. They loved it. Fiery promo, and it was great. Great all the way around, and man, it just put a fire into the pay-per-view, got everybody excited.
Yeah, and look, I think he comes back at probably just the right time. We've been talking a lot in recent weeks about AEW. Things kind of feel like they're slipping in certain aspects, and sometimes the storylines just aren't great. This is a storyline. This is something that we have a build to, right? Like if you go back all the way to when you had these guys doing kangaroo kicks together, that's part of this story. So you have a long-term story, and MJF doesn't really cut anything short. It's full go, and he gets what he wants, and he gets the respect he needs. So I don't foresee anybody cutting anything with him in regards to this storyline that they're going to have. Next, we had Bang Bang Gang defeating Death Triangle by pinfall to retain the Undisputed Trios championships. We then had Timeless Toni Storm defeating Serena Deeb by pinfall to retain the AEW Women's Championship. Orange Cassidy beats Trent Beretta by pinfall. You then had Chris Jericho defeating Shibata and Hook to retain the FTW championship. Chris Jericho adds a new member to his learning tree. It is what it is. Look, I find this version of Chris Jericho to be entertaining. I've been saying for a while now that I feel like he needs to go away for a little bit. He has kind of taken a lot of the negativity and a lot of the things that people say about him online, and he's leaned into them, and he's turned them into this character. And I will admit, I do find this new version of his character to be entertaining. I think it's the right call to keep the he calls it for the world championship. Right call to keep it on him, because now you're going to put Hook into a program with Samoa Joe. You get Samoa Joe getting used. You get Hook help being elevated by a guy like Samoa Joe. I think this is a good call to do this and keep this belt on him, and for Chris Jericho to retain that championship. Next, we had Jon Moxley defeating Takeshita. After that, we had Adam Copeland defeating Malachi Black via submission to retain the TNT Championship. Now, we got our Gangrel spot, which was really, really awesome and really cool to see. But Adam Copeland goes all the way up to the top of the cage and then jumps down. And when he does this, he fractures his leg. This was a stupid spot. Like, I don't think this added anything to the match. You go back, you watch it, you could take this spot out. I don't think it added anything to what you got. And now Adam Copeland is going to be on the shelf for a while. What were your thoughts on this overall match and the use of Gangrel, which, again, I thought was cool? Did Adam Copeland have to go that high and jump off the cage and break his leg? Could you have avoided that spot completely?
Yeah, if you don't jump and land on your leg, I mean, there's no other way. Your leg is not going to sustain, my level of physics knowledge is not great. I think I was a mostly 8 student with like a B- in physics. But I think when your leg is coming down at 20 miles an hour and you try to land on it to stop at 0, it feels like the bone is going to snap like a twig. So I think what should have happened when they go up there is he wanted to do something, and I think midair, I think he should have just did a leg drop off of it or tried to do something where, what was he trying to do? Like, was he trying to land and adjust midair? And like, you can't do stuff like that. I just thought that, yes, climbing up there would have been great, but the only move you really had is you're not going to probably do a frog splash, is just to fly off the cage. That's it. And land on the guy, and you hope that the force doesn't cause a lot of internal injuries. It just, in midair, trying to land like that was going to be disastrous. I think it should have been planned a lot better. It should have been, hey, what's the move? Okay, if you're going to fly off the cage, you have to do a shooting star press, open your arms and legs out, and fly through the air. Whatever that was only going to lead to a disaster. And it sucks because Edge was having good matches. Adam Copeland was establishing himself. You got a champion, and now he's gone. So by and large, when you do stuff like that with a guy at his age, it's stupid. So if you can't guarantee your safety at this point, none of us need to see Adam Copeland doing high spots. We've seen it. You were part of the ladder match that made that match famous. Tables, ladders, and chairs made it famous as well. So you look at it and you say, that's not what you needed to be doing, and hopefully he learns it. And the way in which he announced it was kind of like, well, I got injured. Oh, great. I still get a fat check. So in the end, for these wrestlers, it's kind of crazy, but the way in which they wrestle is doesn't matter. When you're guaranteed that much money, and if you're Adam Copeland, you're like, fuck it, I get 6 months off, I get a couple $1 million not to work. This is great. From a company standpoint, it's a disaster. You've now lost a guy that you developed, and you need as many of the characters that you've put time into to be out there performing. So it's a disaster all the way around for the company. If you're Adam Copeland, you turn the phone on yourself and you're like, great, send me the check.
Yeah, it's one of those things where this is also a locker room leader, so now you're going to lose him for a while. It just, to me, didn't make sense. You didn't need that spot. You could have did anything else. Next, we had Mercedes Moné defeating Willow Nightingale by pinfall to win the TBS Championship. In the end, Stokely Hathaway and Chris Statlander turn on Willow. Look, this is what I was talking about earlier. I felt like this was fine. I thought this was a really good match. You just needed to give stuff time to breathe. Again, you're moving so fast with these pay-per-views. Mercedes Moné, her character is going to sit in the ring. She's going to bask in the glory. She's going to do her weird Sasha Banks WWE thing because she is essentially the same character from WWE as she is in AEW, and it just, to me, doesn't feel like it fits in AEW. Willow Nightingale needs to sell the injury, and then you can have Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway take her out and really show Statlander getting in her face, being upset, spend some time on it, give it a few moments, and let this breathe, and then we can move on. Instead, they kind of hurry along, and next thing you know, we're into Swerve Strickland, Christian Cage. Swerve ends up defeating Christian Cage by pinfall to retain the AEW World Championship. That leads to our main event. But before we get to our main event, I want to ask you this. I like Swerve as the champion. Does it feel to you that Swerve Strickland is being maybe misused as the AEW World Champion? Does it feel like he doesn't necessarily have the storylines, or isn't necessarily getting the competition, or isn't necessarily getting the time that the usual AEW World Champion would get? And what I mean by this is he has championship matches that open Dynamite or are in the middle of Dynamite. He then has a match against Christian Cage. And look, as great as Christian Cage is, he's fantastic, right? I don't feel like Swerve Strickland should be in a match with Christian Cage. Christian Cage, to me, at this moment in time, is somewhere in the middle of the card, not at the top of the card. This match right here, I understand that we've got Anarchy in the Arena that's coming up right after this match, but it feels like he should be main eventing pay-per-views, and I don't know if he's main evented a pay-per-view. They'll say he's the co-main event, but I don't feel like he's the main event. He's the guy who's closed the pay-per-view out since he's won the championship. To me, it feels like Swerve Strickland's maybe being a little bit miscast and being misused as the AEW World Champion. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I look at it, and as you were saying that, my thoughts were interesting in that Swerve deserves to be the champion, but it's a rare situation sometimes in companies where the champion is not the biggest star in the company. I think that you could argue that Will Ospreay right away was bigger than Swerve Strickland. You can argue that, even Okada has bigger stature than Swerve Strickland. So it's a situation in which you put the belt on the hottest wrestler, but not the most over guy. And that's the tough part, is that I don't really care about Strickland's matches as much as I want to see what the hell they're doing with Ospreay. I thought Okada telling the crowd that was chanting CM Punk, "Shut up, bitches." 3 words, it was great. You see the aura that he brings to the table. They're bigger stars all the way around. MJF, bigger star, now he's back. So that further diminishes Swerve. And it just sucks. And partly that is due to the company. The company's job is to do the due diligence to give the guy important meaning. So, for example, would it have been a rough thing to have MJF go out there and talk shit, and to have Swerve just come out there and look at him and do a finishing move and walk off? I don't think that would have been a problem. I thought that would have planted a seed that would give, oh shit, they think Swerve is as good as MJF. And Swerve needs to probably lean into that. I'm the guy here, and I don't care about anybody else, and everybody needs to respect what's going down, and they need to establish Swerve a little bit more. And I think what they did is they stopped doing the work once they gave him the belt. They're like, okay, you got the belt now, so you're the champion. Well, no, you still got to kind of do the work. You got to, the work really, Cody Rhodes said it, the work really begins once the belt is given to you. You got to also establish, okay, you got the belt, now you got to have the attention on you. You got to feel like when Swerve goes in there that it's most important, and it doesn't feel that way right now. You're exactly right.
Yeah, it's a weird, we're in a weird place with Swerve Strickland as the champion, and hopefully he gets right, because again, I kind of feel like he deserves it too, right? I feel like he does a lot. He's an entertaining guy. He's a great wrestler. He says a lot of the right things. It just, to me, it just something feels off. It just doesn't feel like it fits. Again, this leads to our main event, which is the Elite taking on Team AEW. The Elite end up winning the Anarchy in the Arena. In this match, you had Jack Perry set on fire. You had Darby Allin basically strung up and then super kicked. This was an absolutely crazy, brutal match. Look, I know you loved it. I just want to give you some time so you can talk about it, because I know this was one of your favorite matches. You were sending me clips and you were sending me screen grabs of stuff that took place in this match because you were so excited by it. So I just want to give you a little bit of time to kind of talk about your favorite moments with this match. Again, I think right call, the Elite winning. It again gives them more power, has them going more crazy with what they're trying to do in their hostile takeover of AEW. So I think it works. But it was absolutely nuts. It was an absolutely crazy match.
Yeah, it was. And I'm thankful that I missed it live, because if you get it in parts, you got to just see it when you're fully awake and invested. Oh, man, they set a dude. Like, I didn't know that Darby Allin has like a license to be able to use a flamethrower. And so throughout the week, it was flamethrower week for Darby Allin. So that was crazy that they lit Jack Perry on fire. It seemed like they did it the best way possible. Again, risky, but probably one in which they definitely rehearsed it multiple times in order to run that shit hanging. I thought, Darby Allin up there by his ankles was a little bit tough, because you know that they're talking about the Owen Hart situation and the tournament and what that impact is. So that was a little bit like cringe, but it also produced some great stuff in the manner in which they were able to do some things. I look at it, those kind of anarchy matches, and you say, okay, it's just going to be fucking wild. It's just going to be crazy with all the shit that they're going to try to do. And it's just one of those things where, whereas you and I and most wrestling fans feel like, okay, there should be some level of concern for safety, that these guys want to be able to get out and get out pretty healthy. For the most part, it feels like everybody came out unscathed, and it did what it was supposed to do to elevate Jack Perry and the Elite. And you recognize, too, it just sucks because Okada's cool as part of the Elite. It's nice, but I think that he could do so much more. He's really a standalone superstar in and of itself. And you look at it from the other perspective, it really, the believability of the other team winning was probably pretty low. But, hey, in the end, it was a noble effort. And you're always trying to establish now the Elite as being these characters that are going to be taking over and have this unpredictability. So the match had everything. It was so much chaos in regards to this match. It was special. And look, each year the Anarchy in the Arena opportunity is out there. And do I like it? From a freakish standpoint, yeah. From a risk to the performers, I think the risk really does outweigh the rewards of doing it. But it's once a year, you're getting it out there, and you're letting these guys do their thing. They want to do it. I don't know why they want to do it in this day and age. I do think it's stupid because you increase the risk of injury. But hey, super kicks into a guy hanging upside down is pretty interesting. Darby Allin is just great at what he does. He's believable, and he's a guy that just keeps getting his ass beat, but it comes back. But now to me, moving forward, what's important is you got to establish Jack Perry at the next level. He's given the opportunity. He's at the door. Now he's got to go through it and have some good matches individually, and have some feuds, and have some people that he wants to whoop their ass. And I think Jack Perry can be very believable as a scapegoat. I like what they're doing with him.
Yeah, so now coming out of this, and again, I think Jack Perry's probably the one guy that they do need to build around. They need to do something with him. Coming out of this, Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland are going to battle at Forbidden Door. That's about a month away. Does that make sense? Look, Will Ospreay just got a title. Swerve Strickland, we just talked about his title run and how it kind of doesn't really feel all that important at this moment in time. This is a pay-per-view where you're supposed to do a crossover with guys from New Japan, and you're supposed to bring guys in from CMLL, and you're supposed to do things with other wrestling organizations. Would it make more sense for your AEW champion to be battling one of these other guys, a contender from another promotion, kind of add a little bit of spice? Look, Will Ospreay's fantastic. Will Ospreay could do a great match with just about anybody from New Japan. There's history there. There's stuff there that you can pull from and build off of. Will Ospreay can do anything with guys from CMLL if you wanted to. Feel like Swerve Strickland versus anybody from any one of those other promotions would be much more entertaining, would add a little bit more to this pay-per-view. Like if you had Swerve Strickland in the ring and, I don't know, Naito cut a promo and he basically called out Swerve. I feel like that would have more juice. I feel like that would be interesting. That would be fun to watch. It's not what you get. You're getting Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland, and Will Ospreay could have went on to wrestle, like I said, anybody from those promotions, and it would be a fantastic 5-star match. To me, it feels like you're taking probably your 2 best wrestlers or 2 of your more credible wrestlers, guys who already have belts, and you're going to be putting them in a match. And I don't know if Swerve's belt's going to be on the line. So, okay, I guess. But to me, this feels like it's a missed opportunity.
It's going to be interesting because here's the thing, and maybe we'll already set my prediction now. Unfortunately, in this situation, Cousin, I'm going to need you to take your fan hat off and put your business hat on for this one. If you look at attendance, you look at what's going on, and you look at a negotiation for a television contract that maybe is going well or not well, I think it sucks for Swerve, but, to me, what's best for business is Will Ospreay being the champion. He's the biggest star of the company. Yep. He's got the most pop, the most juice. He's the best wrestler. It sucks that they gave him that belt. I get it. The international belt, you can give it relevancy or whatever the hell they call it. I don't know. I get all confused with the continental belt, that belt, and it's the international belt or whatever it is. It's a nice looking belt. But, okay, Will Ospreay clearly worthy of a belt to wear when he goes to the ring. But by and large, he's the biggest star. So, to me, I think moving forward, I'd rather see MJF Will Ospreay than Swerve Strickland. And it sucks because you needed this investment in Swerve, but it's just it sucks for Swerve Strickland because you're in a situation in which the stars of the company, AEW, clearly when you bring in Okada and Will Ospreay, they're the biggest stars. So I would give the belt. I think that in this situation, the match makes sense if Will Ospreay wins. Now, what will happen probably is the only way you probably could elevate Swerve Strickland is to have a superstar match with a lot of false finishes and Swerve wins it because clearly Ospreay can handle a loss. It's not going to kill him. So it's going to be fascinating to see which way they go with it. But I don't think that, there's going to be so many crossover matches that you'll get your satisfaction of the Forbidden Door thesis. But I can't wait really kind of now to fast forward to see who ends up going over in the Swerve match because you can make legit arguments business-wise, storyline-wise for both. But to me, Swerve Strickland needs this match to get himself into that stratosphere. He needs to deliver and be somebody that's believable because right now going into it, overwhelmingly, most people would want Will Ospreay to win and expect him to.
Yeah, it's at this moment in time, I think what you're saying makes a ton of sense, right? Like Will Ospreay at this current juncture is kind of the face of AEW. Yeah. He is the biggest guy. It just again, I feel like this goes back to some booking issues that AEW has, and it just doesn't really work. And look, there is this sentiment out there, in assertion that over the course of the last 5 years, we're 5 years into AEW. Everybody who debuted with AEW is in the same spot. Nobody's been elevated. Nobody's really kind of worked out of where they've been. I think when we say Jack Perry is a guy that they've got to build around, Jack Perry might be your closest guy to kind of breaking through. You go back 5 years ago, Jack Perry was brought in. He was just an indie guy. Wasn't really known, right? Jack Perry hasn't really main evented anything. Hasn't really won a championship, like a world championship. Jack Perry isn't necessarily a monster household name. He still kind of feels like he's a guy. That's why I say it's important for them to kind of build around him. Same thing with Darby Allin. Darby Allin's just kind of, he's a guy. Like he's good, but he's a guy. Like these guys aren't really drawing money. And you look at the Young Bucks. Young Bucks are kind of still in their same spot. Kenny Omega's not even there right now. You've had guys kind of come and go. Yet you brought in a guy like Miro very early on. He's nowhere to be found. Malachi Black's just kind of an afterthought. To me, it goes back to a lot of the booking that takes place in AEW. The one guy who I think has really kind of broke through and elevated himself is MJF. He's like the only guy. You remember when MJF came in, he was kind of, he was underneath Cody Rhodes. He was Cody Rhodes' backup. And very early on, they got him involved in a monster storyline with Cody Rhodes. Remember, he cost Cody Rhodes any ability to ever fight for that AEW championship. And that was one of those death nails for Cody Rhodes' career in AEW. After that, MJF kind of was able to springboard and kind of break through. Whatever constraints they put on him, he was able to break through. It really feels like everybody else, 5 years in, is kind of still in the same box that they were in. And I think a lot of that points to Tony Khan. And there are some reports that are coming out where it kind of sounds like the inmates are running the asylum. That was their words, not my words. It feels like Tony Khan has gone to this week-by-week booking, so no real long-term story. You're advertising matches that aren't going on. This week we were supposed to have, I believe it was a Saraya match, and that it was Saraya versus Mariah May. That got bumped to next week, and it's because this booking that he's doing, it's all kind of very WWE-esque, the later years of Vince McMahon, which we all know doesn't really work. It's not what fans want to see. And it's frustrating watching this product that kind of feels like it has stagnated a little bit, and parts of it are very, very stale. What do you make of that assertion that 5 years in, guys are still kind of in their same boxes? Guys are still kind of in their same spot, and really and truly, MJF's the only one who really has broken through.
Very well said on your part. Very well said in regards to once they started to go with talent acquisition from WWE, it became a problem. And it's really disappointing when you see, the likes of a Saraya that really should have really elevated herself, and it kind of feels like they're still living off the name of the past. Chris Jericho obviously is a star, and it's fun, but you look at a guy like Big Bill. Like, do you think him yucking it up with Chris Jericho is the best use of a physical monster? Like, I would say he should be powerbombing people off of the ropes and being an established star. And yet you brought him in, and okay, he could have did that a year ago. Now he's there, and he hasn't taken a step forward. You look at the likes of a Ricky Starks and a guy that departed the company in Ethan Page. I think a guy like that saw the writing on the wall. And I have been in the last couple of days. I had on DVR the 6 episodes of AEW. And it started to reveal itself with Sammy Guevara, where he'd be like, man, I just had this great two-week run where I'm fighting Bryan Danielson, and everybody's loving it. And then 2 weeks he's not on TV. And I'm at the episode 5 of 6 where he's going to have a meeting with Tony Khan and is going to say to Tony, hey, don't you think it's kind of a waste to not build on my momentum after the 2 matches? And I'm curious to see how that's handled. But the signs are there. The roster's bloated, and you're not creating anybody. So a guy like All Ego Ethan Page can go to another opportunity pretty quickly and see that, oh man, when the light is shined on me and I get the force, then the natural talent can be there. And I think that that's the biggest problem with AEW is they're just putting on great wrestling matches. Well, that's like 50% of the formula. You got to create stars. You got to create appeal. Like, if you're only going to appeal to your core 700,000 people, that's fine, but it feels like they're putting a cap on where they can go. And it doesn't feel like it feels like the only way they can go is down based on their current model.
Yep. I think you elaborated on what I said so well. And that's what I've been seeing. And that's kind of what I see is there's no real follow-up a lot of times. Like you said, Sammy Guevara is a great pull by you because, look, I know he's had stuff going on. His Ty Mello ended up getting pregnant. She still can't come back to the ring and compete. But Sammy Guevara has been a guy who's been incredibly hot at times and then cools out and then incredibly hot and then cools out. It's this stop and start that you see with a lot of the booking that goes on with AEW. And the guys who are really good, like guys like Jon Moxley, guys who MJF, guys who have kind of know how to push through and kind of get what they got to get over, are able to do it. If you're not talented enough or you're not experienced enough, I shouldn't even say talented. If you're not experienced enough, I don't think you're able to figure that out. And I think that is what happens with a lot of these guys. And that is the unfortunate thing because you do have a ton of talent on that roster. You do have a ton of stars, but I feel like the way that they do their booking puts these guys in bad spots. And in the end, nobody gets over. And when nobody gets over, what are we watching? You're right. We're just watching a collection of matches. we can go watch that on an indie show, and it'll probably be a lot better, in all honesty. So it's just kind of weird. AEW's in a bit of a weird spot. Get back on track with the pay-per-view. I outpaced you by one. I got them all right. The one you got wrong was the Chris Jericho match. So for calling the card, you take the point for WWE. I'll take the point for AEW. Because of that, I still hold a 1-point lead over you. It is 4-3. Are you ready for some news and notes?
Exactly to your point, before news and notes, how the hell is Chris Jericho holding the FTW title? How does that help Hook? Exactly. That doesn't do shit. That's Hook's belt. So in the end, you need to give the rub back. Well, Chris Jericho don't need no rub. The man can create 50,000 other characters. How does that help? Where's the payoff? Where is the payoff for having...
Here's the thing, too.
What the fuck are you waiting for?
Well, here's the thing, too. So look at Chris Jericho, right? So Chris Jericho came in, and he had his own faction. And in his faction, he had Santana and Ortiz. Santana's gone. I have no idea where Ortiz is. Jake Hager hasn't been on TV, and I'm going to have some news on Jake Hager here shortly. Sammy Guevara, we haven't seen him on TV. And then that group evolves into another group, and FTR was part of it. FTR is still kind of around, but those guys really should be main event tag team talents, and they're kind of somewhere in the middle. You then go to what he's got going on now. He's doing this thing with Big Bill. He's got the new guy that he's working with, and Hook was there leading up to all of this. And like, Hook is a guy you should build around. Hook is a star. You just have to invest in him and help develop him. And you've done none of that. So, again, Chris Jericho doesn't need to be built. Chris Jericho's already built. He should be building up all these other guys. And it's not really happening. It's not working. It is a lot of the guys who are in the same spot when they came in are still in those same spots. And everybody else is kind of looking up like, hey, how do I get up the totem pole here? How do I get up the card to become that main event guy? And it's like, well, if you're not a main event guy already, then you're not going to be a main event guy now. And it's really unfortunate. Best way I could describe this. This is something that I think you'll understand. I'll help put it into a little bit of perspective for you. So we're both radio guys, right? We both really like radio. My hopes and my dreams were one point to go work for 97.1 or was to work for a radio station that was going to compete against 97.1. And I had some conversations with different people at 97.1 about, working there and doing things there. And basically I was told, unless you go out and you really make it big somewhere else, you will have no opportunities here. Like it won't work for you here, because what you go in as is kind of how they see you. It's not one of those things where you can really elevate yourself up to, you can't really go in as a producer or as a board op and then really get up to where you're sitting in that lead chair, where you're either sitting in that second chair. They'll give you some opportunities. You can do some stuff, but it's not like you're going to have your own show. You're not gonna be one of the marquee names. You'll always be kind of one of those background guys. You have to go out and you've got to do it somewhere else. And then they'll see that you're doing it somewhere else, and then they will then bring you in and put you in that chair. You can't work your way up the ladder there. And it's kind of feels like it's the same thing here at AEW. You come in this box, and this is what they see you as, and then you will stay in this box, and this is where you'll end up. Yeah, you'll get to, every now and then you might get to be part of a main event, and every now and again you'll get to do something different. But for the most part, you're going to come in as a mid-card guy. You'll be seen as a mid-card guy. You're going to come in as a producer for a radio show. You're going to be seen as a producer for a radio show. And that's kind of what it is. And it's unfortunate because you sometimes have really talented individuals who don't get those opportunities, and you end up missing out, and you don't end up developing those guys. And sometimes those guys just end up burning out or washing out. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's super tough, too, because in that model, too, it takes forever to work your way up the ladder. Nobody can do that at making minimum wage, and that's just really tough. People have families to live and families to lead and stuff to do, and it's super tough, exactly, especially with a station that's already established. The people that they brought in have years of experience and do stuff, but it's a crazy thing, too, with the way in which you handle a roster. in the manner in which you think that if you elevated people and told stories, the company would do better. But instead, it kind of feels like you've kind of arbitrarily given up your thesis of growing the company to be big. It's kind of like we're here, we're declaring ourselves a big company, but we're just going to stick with 700,000 people and 80,000 pay-per-view buys every. It's like, okay, it's kind of like, why not push the boundaries a little bit and see what you got? And it is true in that maybe they lost the biggest star that they ever had when that thesis kind of came to fruition. And Cody Rhodes said, this isn't the thesis we had, was to go out and start signing big names all over the place and then just kind of letting them be. That's not the thesis. It was kind of to grow and to develop big stars. And I think that's probably where Cody Rhodes' biggest, it hasn't been reported fully, but it's probably his biggest ills is like, we've taken guys that are from WWE and then made them less. Like, what the hell? How is that possible? The idea is to make those big stars. When Chris Jericho migrated to WWE, he became a big star, and the first appearance he was in was with The Rock. So that's where you're having these kind of things in terms of the thesis of AEW is kind of not aligned with kind of keeping things happy. And what you're going to start to see is, I think you're going to start to see the migration of NXT kind of pinching AEW stars, because if you can get the likes of a Sammy Guevara, you can basically run AEW's playbook better than they do on NXT, and you're going to have some great shit going on.
Absolutely. I agree with you 110%.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
You want some news and notes?
Yes, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So earlier this week, a former WWE star left AEW, confirming the speculation. Mark Henry spoke on Busted Open Radio and provided a definitive answer regarding his future, revealing that he would be leaving the company upon the expiry of his contract on May 28th. Henry went on to say, I had a great experience, and I do feel like it's time for me to take more time to handle the markhenry.com and the remarkable brand and focus my attention on what my next steps are. And I'm not going to be renewing my deal. Henry finished by saying, what I'm saying is that I'm going to take some time to work on some projects, and I'm going to come back again in full force because that's what I do. Now, two more names leaving AEW. First, an AEW original. We talked about Chris Jericho. We talked about one of his factions. Well, one of his faction members, Jake Hager, has decided to part ways with AEW. They're saying this is a mutual parting of the ways. And the second name that is leaving AEW is Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson's role on TV has become less since his son's contract was not picked up. He was working in a producer and in a management role, but he is now leaving as well. Now, someone who asked for the release from AEW, and that was granted, you just mentioned this person, was Ethan Page. Ethan Page showed up on WWE NXT on Tuesday and has entered into a program with Trick Williams. Both Fightful and PW Insider have reported that Page has signed with WWE sometime in the days prior to Tuesday's show. On that same NXT show, we had a bit of their own Forbidden Door, their own little crossover. Again, we had TNA Women's Champion show up in Jordynne Grace. Jordynne Grace has made her second appearance on WWE, and she has entered into a program with Roxanne Perez. This sounds like it is a 3-appearance deal with Jordynne Grace. So this was the first of 3. She'll be making 2 more appearances on NXT or on WWE programming. And it sounds like there's going to be some back and forth where they'll have some WWE people going over to TNA. So you'll want to tune into TNA, you'll want to tune into NXT and kind of check out what is going on. And we have some more trouble for AEW, this time with possibly a future television home. Matthew Baloney of the Puck Mailroom newsletter revealed that Tony Khan is getting frustrated with Warner Brothers Discovery, and negotiations haven't been so rosy. According to Baloney, David Zasloff and TNT Sports, Louis Seidbergwasser, I totally hacked that name. I apologize. Both want to retain AEW on TNT and TBS, but Khan himself is disappointed by the offer currently on the table for his content. Baloney further states that losing AEW could be a headache for Zasloff, with the network also likely to lose their rights to the NBA, and it's potentially further pushing him into hot water with his cable carrier deals. AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery are currently in an exclusive negotiating window, which means that any other suitors would have to wait before entering into their own negotiations. Zasloff also wants AEW programming to stay with TBS and TNT and is looking for a way to work out a pay-per-view deal to get those pay-per-views on their Max streaming app. So instead of using Bleacher Report or using Fightful or whatever other pay-per-view streaming service you'd use, you would have to use the Max app. I believe their Max app is like $9.99. And then finally, probably the most important news this week, a 4-horsewoman is out of WWE. Becky Lynch's contract expired on June 1st, and she has not re-signed with WWE. This has been something where WWE has been offering her multiple contracts, trying to negotiate with her, and she's continued to turn them down. The reports is that she'll be taking an extended leave of absence. Dave Meltzer wrote, Lynch's contract expires on 6/1. As many speculate, really since Mania, she is going to be taking time off. He continued, it was described to us as not a retirement, but a very extensive absence. The length of this very extensive absence was not specified. So it'll be interesting because now, technically, she is a free agent. If AEW wanted to enter into negotiations with her, they could. They could possibly bring Becky Lynch in. Otherwise, it sounds like she is just going to take some time off, figure some stuff out, in maybe a year, maybe 6 months. We'll see Becky Lynch back in a WWE ring, or maybe we'll see her in an NXT ring. We'll see what happens. Sounds like she's going to go home and spend some time with the kids, though. So it'll be really interesting to see what takes place with the man Becky Lynch. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. I think the best thing that came out of this weekend as well, outside of the in-ring stuff and the storylines, Will Ospreay dancing the CEO is taking over the internet. At least it's taking over our Twitter page. I love it. It's great. Will Ospreay is very fond, and I don't know, maybe he has an ulterior motive. He does have a family, so it's probably not that motive. Get your mind out of the gutters. But I think that he is a fan of wrestling, and he's definitely intrigued by Sasha Banks, a.k.a. Mercedes Moné. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But it was good to see the backstage camaraderie that's taking place between Moné and Will Ospreay, and we'll see how that develops moving forward. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I'm the Doc, John Macaroon. I can't wait to fire it up next week as these storylines of WWE emerge, as the matches take place on AEW. We'll break it all down on the next episode of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.